Alright, hello everybody. My name is Aaron Wolf, and I'm back to you with another training video. This is week 4 of How to Be an Activist 101, put on by your OneUpAction Chapter Relations Department. This week we will be focusing on networking as an NGO specifically, since we are an NGO. So I will get into this, right into this. So this is pretty much what we're going to be going over. We're going to be talking about where and how to meet people you want to network with. So it'll be kind of outlining likely you want to be directing your search, because you don't want to be just looking everywhere. That's going to distract you and you won't really get the results that you want. And then basic social etiquette, so how to really talk to someone when you are reaching out to them initially, and what to say and what not to say, because there's a lot of do's and don'ts in this industry of making connections. Then we'll be talking about the initial connection, what to do early in your relationship that'll ensure that your relationship is a healthy one, and one where an amicable one where there's a give and take of ideas and an exchange of goods, I guess, to a certain extent. So yeah, we'll be talking about that. We're talking about managing your contact list. So once you build up a pretty solid network, deciding who to keep and who to get rid of within that network. So it just it'll help you narrow it down. And then making yourself a resource. So once you become established in your community and you have a list of connections that you want to keep and you have a good relationship with them, how to make yourself like a desirable contact for other people to network to. Like after a certain extent of networking, like you want to create a reputation for yourself within the community where other people hear about you and they're like, yes, we should network to them, we should reach out to them. So you become the one who's being reached out to. And then finally continuing the relationship. So once all that's been said and done, what can you do to ensure that you keep these relationships, even if you collaborate with them and do projects with them, and you feel like professionally you don't really need anything else from them, but just keeping them close and supporting them as a fellow NGO in your community. So let's move on if I can. Strange that it's not letting me go to the next slide. Oh my god. Don't look at this. Here we go. So where to meet people. OneUpAction, we are an international organization, and with a growing technological field, it can feel like the world is at your fingertips, just like it's written there. So we're going to discuss like the best way you can find new contacts and make the right kind of connections. So jumping right into that, reaching out on social media. Now I know I did a very, very extensive training on social media for week 1 of our training program. It was a little bit excessive maybe, but if you want, you can go back and go to the final section where I talk about commenting on other people. If you want to refresh a little bit and figure out what it is I'm really talking about here. But on social media, you want to find like-minded organizations that you can relate to and reach out to them. So like I talked about, if we are an environmental organization, so looking through different hashtags and all that kind of stuff, you will find different organizations in your community that are like-minded in terms of their values, and you should reach out to them, because those are the kinds of people you're going to want to be working with, and they'll have the right kind of connections too for you if you ever need them. So how do you reach out to them? You comment on their posts, or you DM them. It really depends on the platform. You got to kind of feel it out a little bit. But when I say you use comments, I'm kind of talking about you like encourage you comment like encouraging comments on their posts, like, hey, come check us out too, because that's just like you're just like blatantly advertising yourself with no regard for that person's content. So be respectful and encourage them and be like, oh, that's so cool, all that kind of stuff, to kind of like to kind of show that you guys are willing to make a connection to the creator initially, and then you can message them, DM them, and kind of send them an encouraging message and say hi and all that. I'll talk about more of what to say in that first message a little later on, but yeah, that's kind of how you want to do it. Don't be intimidated if you haven't done this before. That's the big one. I've talked to a lot of people and they're like, I'm too afraid to start my network because where do I begin? And really the first place to begin is with your first connection. Like, it doesn't matter who it is you're reaching out to. Just find somebody that you want to network with and send them a message. It doesn't matter if they're a big organization or a small organization. Just try to do every day. Just try to send a message to one new organization, one new potential connection every single day, and I swear you'll get good at it. You'll find your rhythm. You'll know what to say. You'll be confident in it. Just don't be intimidated. Go in there like you know what you're talking about, because I really hope you know what you're talking about, and I promise you it'll go well. Even if they don't want to collaborate, you'll still make a nice connection. You'll still say hi, and you know, it's just great to get to know people in your community who are doing the same thing for your community that you are. Like I said, do it often. So set a goal, meet that goal about how often you reach a new account. So it doesn't have to be every single day if that's too much for you. If, say, you want to make a new connection maybe once or twice a week, then work to make that connection once or twice a week. What I mean by this is, you know, keep finding new connections, list them down, new people you want to reach out to, and every week, if it's only one, then just write a message for that one person or that one organization and reach out to them that week. But if you only do one a week, you really have time to craft that message, especially for that person. So that should give you a little more confidence. You're not rushing it. You're not giving like a bad message. You're really putting the time and effort into that message, and so likely what will come out of that is a good, healthy relationship. Now, this is a big thing that I realized that you guys should probably know, because we're a pretty new organization, so a lot of the organizations that have chapters in your communities, like maybe like Greenpeace or something along those lines, they'll be large organizations, so those chapters will have thousands and thousands of followers, and you may not have those numbers, and you may be intimidated to reach out to the entire to organization as a whole. So what you can do if you are intimidated to do that is reach out to one of their team members. So if you see on their Instagram or their social media, they give you the email of maybe one team member, or you can find the contact information from one of their team members who are maybe, hopefully involved in outreach, because that would be ideal. Then use LinkedIn or some other social media to DM them to get their attention, because now you're no longer fighting for the attention of this account or organization with thousands and thousands of followers, but this individual person who works directly for this organization, who most likely does not have that same amount of followers, so they're getting less messages in, so yours will stand out more, and it'll be easier to connect with them on a more personal level, because you're just talking directly to that one person and not to the blanket organization. So it's easier to make a more personalized message. And like I said, be bold. Reach out to those larger organizations. Don't be afraid to. At least introduce yourself and what you do in the community, what you're doing for your community, and just, tell them they're doing a great job. I'll talk about the message more in the future, but just introduce yourself. Let them know that you're there, and let them know what you're there to do. Next, it'll lag a little bit, so I'll give it some time. If you can tell, I'm in my room right now because I don't have access to that white wall. There we go. Basic etiquette. Here we go. Right off the bat, don't ask or request anything before you've built a healthy relationship. This is a big no-no I found in the networking community, because, if you ask for something in the first message, that sends a really bad message, I guess, to the person you're reaching out to. If you're requesting collaboration or some kind of resources, then it seems like you're only reaching out to them to get something out of them, and you're like a leech. You're there to drain their resources and their ideas, and you're not there to contribute very much. You're not there to build a healthy relationship with them like you should be. So that's a big no-no. Don't ask or request for anything right off the bat, unless, and this is a caveat. So if this person has posted something like on Instagram, they're like, reach out if you want to collaborate with us on this. Then I guess it would definitely be fine if you're like, hey, this is me, this is what I do, I like what you're doing, I want to collaborate. That's fine to request if they are asking for you to reach out and do that. But unless they're explicitly asking for that, like outreach, I wouldn't recommend you do that. Understand who it is that you're reaching out to. So this can mean multiple things, but what I want you to take away from this is, do your research on this person, like professionally stalk them a little bit. And I know that might sound creepy, but what I'm talking about is like, go through their accounts, know what they do, know what they stand for. That way when you reach out to them, you can send a more personalized message, and you know what it is to kind of highlight, what it is to talk about, what it is to relate to them, like what passions you share. So you know how to craft that message specially for them. Like you're really trying to impress this person, but get them to respect you at the same time. Don't use a script. That's a big one. So a mistake a lot of people make is they write like a blanket template, like they write a basic letter, and they just fill in like the name of the organization and what they wanted, and then their organization name. So like the message is already written, and it's the same for pretty much everybody except for the name of the organization they're reaching out to. I would not recommend doing that, because it's just not personal. Like you're definitely going to miss a lot of details about that organization, and it's just, it's not personal, and what you create here are personal connections that last for a long time. So if you want to have a successful relationship with them, I don't recommend starting off with a script, because that's boring and it doesn't really grab their attention. Responding consistently. This is a big one too. So, you want a professional relationship with them. So, you go back and forth with some messages. Don't leave them hanging. So if they respond, usually within the day, you should respond within the day too. And even if they don't, you should still respond the same day, or at most a day later. It's important to protect your reputation in the community. And little things like forgetting to respond will really damage that reputation, and it'll make you seem unprofessional. And we really don't want that to happen. We want you guys to have the best reputation, the best chances in your community to build these connections. So in order to do that, you really have to respond consistently, and just, respond with proper emails too, or messages. Like if they send like paragraphs and they ask a bunch of questions, don't send them back like 2 sentences. Like try to reciprocate that same amount of time and effort they put into the message, and do that same thing, but maybe do a little bit more. Just always show them that you're engaged, that you want to continue this relationship, and you really respect them, so you're willing to put the time and effort into this. And here's a big one. If someone doesn't respond, don't pester them. So if you reach out to someone, you're like, hey, you're really great, all that kind of stuff. This is who I am, this is all that. And you send them a couple messages over a couple weeks, and they send no reply. I recommend not sending them any more messages, because also it's really easy to come off as annoying if you keep doing that. Like you don't really get the reputation of being it's not a good reputation. I wouldn't recommend pestering them. If they're not checking their messages, they'll see them and they'll get back to you eventually. But I wouldn't recommend sending more than like 3 or 4 messages in a row and trying to get more responses, because sending more messages isn't going to get more response. It's just going to make what you're doing more of an annoyance for them. So if they don't respond, just drop it and hopefully come back to it. I want to talk about something else, but I don't really remember what it was. It popped up in my head. I don't know. It'll come back to me. So, kind of continuing on that. Be careful about what you say when you first reach out. So I know you want to create a personalized connection between you and that organization, but keep it professional. I know that in an attempt to create that bond, sometimes people will inappropriately apply a sense of humor or humor that may offend the other person, or or they may not like, or they may say something that that person might not like. Just be careful about what you say. Be mindful about your audience because you've done research on them, so you know what they stand for, what they're against. So just don't say anything that you think might frustrate them, might offend them, because that's not a great start to a relationship, and they'll always have that in mind because that's their first impression of you. They'll always think of that whether they want to or not when they're reminded of you. And speaking of that, that reminded me of that thing I wanted to talk to you guys about. So if you reach out to them, I recommend having someone like on your team who's in charge of reaching out, maybe a couple people. But if one person in your team, in your chapter, reaches out to an organization, it should always be that person who responds, unless they tell that person, like, I want to pass you on to this person in my chapter. Is that okay with you? And they're like, yeah. Then you could allow someone else in your chapter to message them, but always keep with that same voice. If they feel like they're being passed around the chapter to different people to message them back, they feel like they're not being prioritized, that the relationship really isn't meaningful to them or to you guys. But if you make sure to always reply with that same voice, then they're bonding with that one person in the chapter, and therefore bonding with the entire organization because they see that person as like the voice of the organization in their eyes. So just keep that in mind. Be empathetic and understanding, even if you don't know them. So this is just like, a basic social skill. I just wanted to remind everybody of it because it's important. So, you don't know this person too much that you're talking to. If they come to you with like a difficulty in their organization or a struggle in their life, be understanding, be like empathetic, be like, oh, that's hard. Not like, don't like devalue what it is. So be like, oh, that happens to everybody, you'll get over it. Like, be the understanding, be like a shoulder to cry on, because in the community, you and these other organizations you're each other's resources, you're each other's friends, you will rely on each other from time to time, and you will need a shoulder to cry on, so to speak, and those people will be there for you. Like, you want to create a healthy relationship with them. You don't want to devalue what it is they have to say. Take interest in others too. So this kind of goes off of what I was saying just a second ago. You might not know them, but be interested in what they have to tell you. You're most likely talking to only one person in their organization too. So get to know them really well. Ask them questions, be involved, be engaged, be like, oh, really? You did this? Well, that's so cool. Like, how'd you get that idea? Or how'd you like that? Like, because the best way to make a connection is having people talk about themselves, because people love to talk about themselves. They can do it for days and days. So if you really want someone to open up to you, getting them to talk about themselves is the best way to do that. And give them the chance to talk about their passions too. This is kind of off what I was saying. You have to, don't like flood the conversations you have with just like you talking and talking and talking and not really giving them much of a chance to talk about themselves. Let there be like a good balance. So like a good, like most of it is them talking about themselves, like 60%, and then 40% is you talking about yourself. But don't just like pour information on them about you guys, because ultimately they're not going to care that much. Like, they'll see what you've done through your Instagram posts and all that, so you don't have to repeat it to them in such great detail. They'll already know, and if you just keep flooding them with that information, they're gonna run away. They're not gonna want to hear that constantly. So being mindful is important. I like that little graphic. Just waiting for the next one to load. I would drink water. I'll let you read over that really quick while I drink this. Big water bottle. Alright. So, this is talking about the initial connection now. We're moving fast. So, the first step in making that initial connection is, when I said earlier, doing that research and finding those shared interests and highlighting those interests that you guys share in the beginning in those first few messages to show that you guys have similar values and that a relationship can exist there because you value the same things and you have the same interest, and also not only shared interest, but like if you guys both follow the same organizations or if you've both worked with the same organizations, talk about that, because people are always more open to having relationships if they find that, you know, you've been involved with someone they've been involved with too. So let me give an example out of NGOs. So if I were to meet somebody at my university this year, and I know nobody out of these 40,000 people, and I run into somebody who's like, "Hey, you're from China too? You know, I went to the same school you did. Do you know this person?" And I'm like, "Oh my god, he was my best friend." And he was like, "Oh my god, he's my best friend too." Like, that's connection. That one person will already give us so much to talk about and already give us so many similarities, even though they're not, some of them may not be spoken. Like, that's just such a good place to start off from. Like, we already feel like we're more relatable to each other, and we feel like, you know, there's more for us to talk about, and there's a better chance of us having a good relationship if we share these things. So really highlight those, and don't be afraid to broadcast those. Number 2, don't focus on what you think they want to hear. Be open and honest with them. So what I mean by this is, you know, when you first reach out with those first few messages, you do want to be positive, you do want to be encouraging, but don't just like I don't know, I don't want to use that term, but don't like kiss their butts. Like, don't like just be like, "Oh, you're so great, you're perfect," if they're not perfect. Be open and honest. So if you see something they can improve on, and you're like, "Hey, I have a suggestion that could help you, I think, a little bit in this area," give them that suggestion. Be nice. Be nice about it. Don't be like, "That sucks, here's how you fix it." Be nice about it and show it to them. But, you know, don't just tell them they're perfect, they're the greatest thing that's ever walked the face of the earth. If you're open and honest with them, the connection you have will be more genuine, and they'll see that too. They'll see that, you know, you care, because a lot of this is just showing the other organization you care about them. You care about fostering a relationship, and every good relationship starts with honesty and trust. So by being honest with them, you're really moving along a lot better than if you weren't. Personalize those messages from the very beginning. Like I said, that take the time to do it. Now I know it'll take a lot of time because you're sending maybe, you know, a couple paragraphs, like 2 or 3 paragraphs. Don't flood them with information all at once. But you're sending a couple paragraphs, so do your research. Find out what it is about them that intrigues you, and what you want to find out more about, and what they would probably like talking about to other people. And highlight those things and be like, "Whoa, that's so cool that you, filled in a dam, or like destroyed a dam so that water could continue like going downstream normally." I don't know, something like that, and just talk about that, and be like, "That's so cool. We would love to get in that field," or like, "What advice do you have for us?" Asking for advice is a great way to relate to somebody too, because, you know, you're putting them in a position where they are the professional. They know a lot about this thing, so they feel like they can talk to you more about this. Sorry, I'm very distracted. I'm gonna close this because there is lawn mowing going on outside. Sorry about that. But like, they feel like they can engage with you certain subjects because they know a lot about it, and by giving you advice, they feel like, you know, there's already a mentor-mentee kind of connection, but not really. But like, that's how it goes in their head. Like, there's a connection between you as soon as they give that advice. Let your success speak for itself when you connect with people. So, you know, everyone knows you'll have done stuff, and you'll want to tell people that you're qualified to be a connection of theirs, that you are a good contributing force in the community because of what you've done. But no one wants to hear all your achievements. You don't have to brag to these people. Your resume will speak for itself, so what you've done will speak for itself. They'll see your Instagram, and they'll see everything that you've done. They'll be like, "This person is this organization is impressive. I like what they do, and I like how they do it, and I like how they don't brag about it." They'll respect that, so you can talk a little bit about it. You can be like, "We did this. It's in our Instagram if you want to see it." Just don't brag. That's what I'm trying to say. Just don't brag about it, and That's just a big message right there. Heck about it. Reach out with offers of resources if you feel confident enough to do so. So that's kind of like what I was talking about in number 3, but kind of reversed. So instead of asking for advice, if you wanted to reach out with offers of resources, if you feel confident enough to do so, then do it. Like these training videos or other resources you might have that you created in the chapters. Like if in your chapter you created like a curriculum for certain youth in your community, like educating them about climate change. Be like, hey, we have this. I feel like this could help you kind of accomplish the goal that you're trying to accomplish in your community or in the same community. Would you like to take a look at these? Would you like to kind of see what we've crafted? And that shows that you're open to sharing things and that you want the best for them as much as you want that for yourself. So that's just a great idea that you can implement and build then that initial connection. And then finally, number 6, find a reason to follow up with them and continue that relationship, because it takes time to build these relationships that you want. These are the strong relationships that you want to cultivate for as long as you guys are around. Like these organizations, you want to be around you in everything that you do. Like that would be ideal. That'd be perfect. That way you have a support system and you have, a bunch of potential volunteers if you needed them. So always find a reason to follow up with them. What I mean by that is, you can talk about a certain thing in maybe like in the conversation you're having, you'd be like, you're talking about this interest, and then you find an article talking about that interest of theirs. Like if they're like, I'm interested in like planting these more sustainable, more productive crops in my area, and you see an article literally talking about that, just send that to them. Send that to them and send a little message like, hey, look, this is what I found. Look, this is so cool, and look at how it relates to what we were talking about. That continues the conversation, and that grows the relationship. So just keep finding that kind of stuff to do that really like brings you two together. I'm just gonna wait for this to load again. Drink some water. This is kind of what I was talking about just a second ago. So being unique really makes you stand out, especially in these larger organizations, because they probably receive, a lot of these messages every day or every week. So you have to set yourself apart to really be a connection that they want to make. So in order to do this, you have to take the time to craft a thoughtful, personalized message that is like comprised of stuff that you've learned about them and that you want to learn more about them, and just things that they like talking about. That'll go a long way, because that'll let them know that you want them to know you genuinely care, that you want to foster a healthy relationship with them, and that their time means enough to you for you to do this. Like the time that it takes them to read the email or read the message and respond to the message, you understand that time matters to you, and it means a lot that they're taking the time to do that. So you take the time to make that personalized long message, or not long, like 2-3 paragraphs. I feel like it's a good first message to send, because anything more, no one else will really want to read through the whole thing. So yeah, by doing this, it'll show that you value their time and you value them as much as they should value. Like how much you value their time is how much they will value yours. So put in the respect that you want out of it. That's what I'm trying to say. That is a biggie. Remember that. Next slide. It'll look kind of similar to this one. Yeah, there we go. Be confident. We talked about that too. So be positive and focused on using excited language. Like in real life, I'm never like this. I'm never this uppity, never this like jumpy and so like positive. Well, I feel like I'm pretty positive, but like I'm never this excited. But use this excited language. So when you're messaging someone and it's relaxed and it's encouraging, like it's not too formal, then it feels more real. It feels like you're having a face-to-face conversation. It feels like you're having like a personal conversation where you really want to learn more about that person. Like when you're meeting a new person first time, you want them to be a friend. You like, this person has a good vibe to them. They have a good they have a good personality and I want them to be a part of my life. I want them to be a friend of mine. Speak kind of like that. Like, be encouraging, be engaged. If you're not face to face and you can't be like smiling and listening the whole time, being like, oh, that's so cool every other sentence. Use excited language in those messages that you respond to them, because tone is hard to rate online. So I could be like, oh wow, that's really cool, I like that you do that a lot. Like, that could be what it sounds like on text, but really you're trying to be like, oh, that's really cool, I love that you're doing that, but they don't see it as sincere. So try to like substitute like the normal language with maybe more positive, like excited language, to kind of get them to figure out what exactly your tone is, so that they like, and also more importantly, so they don't take your messages the wrong way, so that they take every message like it's an excited tone. That's really important. And this thing that I'm talking about in a second may not be as easy to do, based on everything that's going on in the world right now. But move online connections offline. So these people that you're connecting with will be members of your community. So they'll probably be pretty local. So if you really want to grow that relationship, grow the connection, and ensure that it's a long-lasting one, that they can't just like stop talking to you on messages that they want to, move an online person to relationship. Now, I'm not going to encourage any like irresponsible like meet in person. Like, I know that follow distancing guidelines right now and all that, like mask on, 6 feet apart, face to face if you want to. I wouldn't recommend it for a time like this, but it's really based on where you live and what the guidelines are there. But if you meet in person, it's easier to connect with them. It's easier to brainstorm, easier to do anything. It allows you to put a face in the name, which is really important, because like then you know who it is you're talking to, and you get a better idea, a better sense of how to talk to them. Once you meet them in person, you see how they really talk and what their interests are, a lot better than over messages, because they might be putting up a facade, a face, and get a different face on messages. But once you talk in person, the real face comes out. Like, you see who they really are. So it allows you to kind of communicate with them better in the future. Next slide. No. There we go. Okay, outreach fundamentals. So this is kind of like the message I was talking about. So I'll go from top to bottom here. This acronym is KISS. I changed the last word because it was a little rude, but this acronym is one that people in the networking community use a lot. KISS, keep it simple, silly. If your first message is too long, no one will really read it, and it's not very engaging if it's like 11 paragraphs about how great they are and who you are and why you're reaching out to them and all that stuff. Keep it short and sweet, like a paragraph introducing yourself, a paragraph talking about them, and a paragraph that's like, it gives them a couple questions, like asking them a question or two, and then being like, thanks for taking the time to read this. I love reaching out to you. Hope we can continue this professional relationship. Something like that. I don't know. Just don't try to put too much in an email, because that's sometimes off-putting, and people will put off responding to your message because it's so long and they feel overwhelmed by it. Make it about them. So I've said that a lot. Introduce yourself, but the focus of the message should be talking about them. They should be, so you're the one messaging them. So they want to know that you care about them and you care about what they have to say. So make it about them. Give them good reason to believe that, because it is true, that you are reaching out to them to create a connection with them because you care about them, not because you want something out of it. Because you shouldn't go in wanting something out of this. You should go in wanting to make a connection, make a relationship. And if you get certain things that I'll talk about later from these relationships, that's great. But you're just here to connect with those other people in your community, these other organizations that are like-minded. Finding a mutual connection. Now I've talked about this. Highlight something you have in common, interests or mutual contacts, to give them more reason to associate with you. So I've talked about that a lot in the past, so I won't focus too much on that because that'll just be overkill. But this just kind of like proves the importance of it. Really highlight these things that connect the two of you, whether it be friends or organizations or interests or activities you've done in the past. Just mention those ever so like delicately. Don't like be like, hey, we did this together, or we both did this thing, so we're best friends now. Be like, just bring it up like casually, and then move on. You know, keeping it interesting. So don't let the conversation get dull. Like every so often, I know I'm fading, and I'm getting a little bit boring, a little bit not engaging. Don't do that in your conversations. So find ways to keep your contacts coming back to you. Keep it interesting. Keep it simple, silly. Like I talked about with the article, like don't always be asking questions about them. Like do it initially, that's great. But like if you only ever ask questions and you don't say anything else, then it might seem a little bit difficult, or not difficult, but like those people won't want to message you as much because you're only asking questions. Like have a real conversation. That's what it is. Like don't just be asking questions, don't just be telling information, don't just be sending articles. Do what normal people do. Like you're one person talking to another person that you would like to be friends with. Just look at it that way, because that's really what it is. You want to just find new things that build a relationship. So more articles, more projects that you guys can work on together, anything like that. Now, this is number 4, I believe, managing your contact list. We are moving through this, guys. Now, when you make the right contacts, I want you to check in consistently. What I mean by that is, you'll run into a lot of people probably while you're networking, when you're reaching out to new organizations. But there will be a few that will stand out in your mind as the good ones. They'll be the ones that reciprocate just as much effort and time and care into your relationship that you do. Those are the good ones. Those are the ones that you want to keep close. So check in with them consistently. They'll be the ones you can rely on in the future. They'll be the ones that'll provide you with resources that you might need, or things that they might think will help you. Those are the ones that you want to, really nurture your relationship with. Keep it at or below 150 contacts. Now that might seem like a whole bunch, but in some of the larger cities you may be operating in, there will be that many people or more organizations and individuals that you might want to network with. So keep it at or below that number, because that is a manageable number. Think about those contacts as like followers or people you're emailing with. If you have too many of them, it'll be hard to keep track. Like I don't have that many followers on Instagram or Snapchat, but I'll post something and a couple people will send me messages, and even like 8 people, I'll be bad at it, and I'll take like 4 days to get back to them, because like I'm just not good at responding to that kind of stuff. So if you have like a smaller community that's like tight knit, then that you'll have more time to work on these relationships and to foster these good relationships. Also, if you keep it at a certain number, you'll have better communication with these connections that you keep, because you'll have more time to keep sending them thoughtful, personalized messages, and they'll appreciate that, and you won't be overwhelmed with 400 people sending you messages constantly, where you have to send out these basic messages that just have the names changed, because you don't want to do that. You want to have individual relationships with each organization that you connect with. Get rid of the leeches. So if you remember earlier, I talked about, don't be a leech. So get rid of those people who, those organizations that are like, all right, can you give me this? Or, hey, can I have this? Or, you did this really well. Can you tell me how you did it? Or, I don't really want to do this. Can you do it for me and kind of help me out? Like those people the people who are using you to, accomplish a goal with a different, who reach out to you with an ulterior motive. People who reach out to you wanting something and not really caring about that relationship. Get rid of those people in your contacts. Be nice about it. Just be like, I don't know how you want to approach that. It really depends on, who you are as an organization and as a person. But, just kind of separate yourself from them because they don't bring anything to the table, and they'll just be a burden on you. Take notes in your contacts. So what I mean by that is, when you talk to them, take notes that will fuel future discussions. So like, if you're talking about their passions and they bring up some of them, take note of it. Like, this person, you'll be like, so you're talking with Greenpeace Dublin, for example, and you're based in Dublin, and you're like, hey, what are your passions? And then like they give you like 3 or 4 passions, and then in your like contact list you'll write down like Greenpeace Dublin, and then you'll write the notes of like, they have these passions, they're very passionate about this, they've done this in the past, they love talking about this kind of stuff. Take note of that so that you can bring those up in future discussions, and it'll make for a more meaningful connection because you'll know like how and what direction to take those personalized messages. Also, if you do give their contact to another person in your chapter, like I said earlier, like, oh, I'll give you this to this person to talk about this, you can also provide them with a list of those passions, those notes, and they can use those in that discussion. So it's great to have. I'm not telling you have to take notes on everybody that you make a connection with, but it's nice to have it because it'll provide some sense of organization and going to the next page. 1 second. Oh, that's why. Cutting out toxic contacts. So like the leeches, I'm gonna try to like highlight a little better who those leeches are. So they only approach you when they want something. They're using you for resources. They don't care to foster a real relationship. You can work to mend it. Be like, hey, I want to have a real relationship with you. I don't just want to be giving you resources all the time. You can do that, but if it doesn't work, then there's not much hope for that relationship, and that's a contact you probably don't want. Their input is always critical, and they don't value your work. So if they're always giving you negative comments on the things you're doing, and they're putting down the work you've done, they're a source of stress that you don't need. You shouldn't take them too seriously because they're probably just trying to put you down to get farther in the community. Like, they're being competitive, this is a totally wrong place to be competitive. If we're going to get stuff done, we have to work together. So just cut them out. They're being toxic. Their responses are few and far between. That's an expression that basically means their responses aren't great. They don't respond a lot, and when they do, there's like long periods of time between those responses. They don't care much for the relationship you're trying to create, or they're obviously busy. They're putting their effort somewhere else. Don't feel bad though. You can't lose what relationship you never had. So I wouldn't say cut ties with them, but maybe start reaching out as much. And then if maybe they have time again, they'll message you. But if they've never, you always want to for those kinds of people, you always want to make it so that you can leave off, and you leave off somewhere, and then you can continue a relationship some other time when they have more time, or when they realize, hey, this is a good person to keep in contact with, I should probably reach out again and apologize. Don't burn the bridges with them. Don't cut ties. Just maybe stop contacting them as much because they're not putting the same kind of effort in. Next slide, please. It's just a quote that I found that I really liked. So Ivan Misner, a business professional, said, networking is far more about farming than it is about hunting. Now what this means is, a lot of people might confuse networking as, finding as many contacts as they can and just having them there if you want to reach out to them. But what networking really is about is, farming. It's about cultivating those relationships with the couple people that you do reach out to, because it's much more impactful to you and to them if you reach out to them and you create a relationship rather than just having them in your contact book and being like, hey, this is me, I have your contact now. That does nothing. No one wants to that. No one wants to really help out that person, really want to build a connection with that person. That's just I have you just to have you. Also, look at that arm, it's backwards. Okay. Oh, that's a lot faster. All right. Making yourself a resource. So that's number 5. We're on to number 5 now out of 6. So we're moving through. I promise. I promise. Okay, we'll get through this. Begin your relationship being helpful. So even in your first few messages, I want you to include a suggestion you believe could be more successful, and keep doing this every so often, like throughout your messages. Just try them out. Be an external set of eyes that'll kind of monitor what they do and help them along. Because making yourself it's not just a one-time thing by being like, hey, I have this, do you want it? Because they don't see you as a resource. They don't see you as someone who's been helpful in the past in that kind of way. So from the very beginning, you have to kind of establish that you can do that. And then after you begin your relationship, offer to exchange resources. So as your relationship progresses, you can mention to them that you have resources they may or may not have. Offering to them if you believe they can help them. So, like I said earlier, if you have training videos that you've made or a curriculum that you've made, you can show it to them and be like, hey, I want this, or do you want to exchange resources? I have this. If you wanted it, I know it might help you with this program that you're doing. That's great. That will establish you as a resource for them in your community. Now, if you do this with a whole bunch of people, they'll all see you as the resource for the community. They'll see you as the guiding, or just as a very helpful person and a very reputable source. Because at OneUpAction, we want to be more than just an activist group that does projects that are great projects for the community, but we want to be a resource to others too, because that's how we can really elevate and grow the climate activist community. And then get them to share it too. So once you're established as a resource, as a reputable source in the community, you just be like, hey, if you wanted to send this out to your contacts, go for it. If you see someone else who could use this, go ahead and send that out to them. Just tell them where it's from. So by them sharing this with their community, with their contacts, your base of your realm influence spreads. You start to influence more and more people, and more people know about you, more organizations. So without even trying, your contacts or your network expands exponentially. All right, next slide. Let's go. Is it doing it? I like the graphics they put on here. Oh, this one especially. Yeah, this is number 6 now, I think. The beginning of number 6. So caring for these relationships, like I talked about earlier, you want to keep them close. So you want to check in regularly so they know you're still invested in the relationship that you have with them, that you still care about them, and you want to see that they're doing great. Take part in initiatives they put on. So if they're hosting some kind of trash pickup in your community, be like, hey, we have a couple of volunteers from our group that want to do it. Can we join in? They'd be like, sure. So that's really great. Just offering help when and where you think they might need it. That. And then including them in the things that you're doing too. So if you're doing a trash pickup, if you're doing some cool initiatives, some really great, climate activism, some initiative that you've put on, share it to them, share it to your contacts. Be like, hey, we're doing this on this date here, and this is what the goal is. Do you guys want to join? This is an easy opportunity for you guys to to forward your community in terms of climate activism, because we're putting on this event, but we would love for you to take part. That's great. That shows that you want to help them out as much as you need the help. That's great. Keep them involved in your actions as well. So I just kind of talked about that. Be a loud supporter. Be their number one biggest fan. Promote their content online. Repost their stuff. Share it with your audience. Display them proudly. Comment and be encouraging in all their posts, and push them to try new things too. So if you're talking to them and they're like, oh, we wanted to do this, but it's kind of scary, be like, do it. Really encourage them to expand their actions. Yeah, because ultimately it'll benefit both of you guys. This last slide is coming up right now. Utilizing connections. So once you've created like a thriving network of contacts, you can start kind of having fun with it, you know? Your connections have connections. If you have like 100 connections, you have 100 connections that probably have 100 connections too. Now some of those are definitely overlapping, but that's a huge network of people. That's 10, like, that's just for example. So if you have 100 people and each of those 100 people have 100 people, I'm pretty sure that's 10,000 people, like, or 10,000 organizations. That's great. So they can refer you to the right kind of people when you need it. So you're trying to get something done, you're trying to reach out to like local city council members or local government. They know those people because they've done things with them, and they can refer you to them. They can be like, hey, city councilman or mayor or whatever. They can be like, hey, there's this organization trying to do this. I know them, they're great. Here's their contacts. You're set. Like, that's so helpful. You have like that'll really help you along in terms of, you know, expanding your actions and doing more things for your community. And as you collaborate with your contacts, you gain access to their resources too. So, you know, when you build that connection, they'll have resources they'll want to share with you, just like you will have resources you want to share with them. And one of those big resources is having, you know, their pages, all their like social media pages. You'll probably get featured on them a couple times if you work with them on initiatives and actions that they take. So that's a new audience base that will see you. And when a large organization looks at you and they see the community that's rallied behind you and support, it makes you seem a lot more professional. So if there is an organization like the UN that's looking to find like organizations, climate change organizations or climate activist organizations in your community that they want to partner with, and they see you having so many connections and having so many people saying great things about you in your community, that automatically puts you in the running for these partnerships. Like that's great. It sets you up for success. So I kind of rushed through the last couple of slides, but that's pretty much all I have to say about networking. It's pretty straightforward. I want to thank all you guys for sticking with me and all my mumbling and watching all of this. If anyone has any questions, you can reach me at aaron@oneupaction.org right here. Here's the OneUpAction website. It's really nice. You can check out our chapter relations or action chapters page. On there you can find certain forms, like you can request resources. That's how we got these training videos done. So if you have you want to request, go on there and request them, and we'll get them and we will answer them, I promise you. And then you can also add me on WhatsApp right there. That is my contact information if you want anything or wanted to talk about something. You know, I'm around. My phone's always right next to me. We will be sending out a transcript of this video as well as a French transcript of this video within the next week. Since there's no written transcript, it will be transcribed by an application, so it might not be the most accurate, but it'll still get the message across. I really want to thank Bailey Selfors, the Director of Chapter Relations, for helping me with the graphics and some of the content. But aside from that, I am done. I have been Aaron Wolf, and thank you for tuning in to week 4 of our How to Be an Activist training series. Bye, everybody.